Feenstra on Friday the 23rd of April, live at the Boom Boom Club. Talking to Andy Davis on my left, great to have you here Andy. James White on my right from the band that was and is, once again, Stackridge, the one and only Stackridge. Chaps, you're touring again after all these years, off and on. Was it a long time coming? Was it always going to happen again?
It's been a long time.
Yeah, we're going to do one tour a year, we decided. Sometime.
From now on, yeah. So fans can expect a little bit of continuity, stable lineup.
Yes, and also we can corral all the fans into a 2-month period, you see, rather than spreading them out over the year.
Well, that's what a lot of bands try and do, of course. Of course, you're still touring on the back of this wonderful album, Victory for Common Sense. There it is on Helium Records. Wonderful album. It kind of falls into the niche that some critics have said that you belong in, which is half the Beatles and half musical. How do you feel about that?
Not a bad assessment. Probably a couple of other things thrown in as well, wouldn't you say?
Psychedelia.
Bit of psychedelia.
West Coast.
Yeah, hint of rock as well. Rock music.
Beautiful harmonies.
Thank you.
Great songs.
Thank you.
Always great songs with Stackridge. I mean, you two are famous in your own right for songwriting, of course.
Well, we've always been interested in songwriting above everything else, really, I think it's fair to say.
Yeah. You came out with this great quote, and tell me if I get it wrong, where you once said, I think Andy said this, that you were 50-year-old songwriters writing for a 19-year-old market, which I thought was a fantastic appraisal of your pop sensibilities.
Could be, yes.
Which must be very, very frustrating at times.
Yeah.
Unless you sell a lot of records, of course.
Unless you do, which we don't seem to, but that day will come.
Well, you certainly have done in the past, as the Corgis, of course.
Yeah, that was great.
And you're still doing some of that stuff now. Do you want to tell everybody what you're still playing as part of the current band?
Well, Popsters, do you remember Everybody's Got to Learn Sometime, that song? Well, we do that song as part of the Stackridge set. It was a Corgis recording, but we do it as Stackridge. Yeah, so come and hear it.
And the Boots song?
Yeah, Boots and Shoes is another Corgis song that we do on this Stackridge album, A Victory for Common Sense, and we perform it live as well. So, you know, the Corgis creep into the Stackridge thing.
And the bass line on that, along with several other songs, most notably Something About the Beatles, is obviously very, very Beatles influenced. I mean, where did that first start with Stackridge, the Beatles influence?
Well, it came before Stackridge, really, because I guess we're the perfect age, really, to...
As we all were.
Yes, 63 when they hit really big. I was 13, so I'm the perfect age. So they were always the ones to aspire to.
So you soaked in all those influences and they've come out all these years later. Is that a fair assessment?
I think so. Yeah. Also, the Beatles managed to always keep the standard of songwriting absolutely right at the top, and so that was kind of an inspiration as well.
Yeah.
You know.
But the funny thing about Stackridge, of course, is, we were talking about this before we started filming, is that you've been through many, many lineups. You've actually recorded albums where one of you or both of you haven't been on an actual album. And yet you've got quite the opposite. You've got the continuity of and the strength of your songwriting. So what went wrong with it? Was it just organising the band and falling out with people, or just different musical aspirations? What actually happened down the years?
It's really, I mean, it's just a sort of, it's life compressed into the life of a rock band.
Yeah.
I mean, it goes across a span of from when we were 18 years old to now we're 60 years old. So stuff's going to happen in between, isn't it?
But you still look 35. But go ahead.
That old? 25, please. So sometimes, it's musical differences. Sometimes we can't stand the sight of each other. Sometimes people sit this one out.
Yeah, it's all those things, isn't it?
The thing about Stackridge is we've got 4 songwriters, so there's usually enough to go round. Yeah.
But being as we're talking to you two, I mean, you've written some absolutely killer songs.
Yeah.
And above all, apart from astute and humorous lyrics, the melodies. Where did the melodies come from? How do you work on those?
We nick them all.
Yeah.
We nick
Well, you certainly
it's the best one. It's simple and it's good,
Yeah. But how do you, the melodies, do you ever start with a melody and then work your way around that, or how does that work?
Yeah, I think we both start from the music end you come, you know, we try and come up with a good tune, a good chord sequence,
Yeah.
and the words always come later.
Really?
But I mean, we are very keen on writing the best lyrics we can as well, not just any old sort of cliched stuff.
Oh, no, it's very
Yeah,
thoughtful
but
stuff.
the music does tend to come first, I think, almost always.
And the current lineup, of course, you're making use of ukuleles and violins and everything else. Does that mean you've gone more kind of rootsy and a little less electric, or?
Well, I think...
Red Squirrel wouldn't suggest that, of course.
Yeah, it was kind of... What happened was, we were a six-piece. Crun, the original bass player of the band, was performing with us up until the last tour, but then he decided it was too much trouble. He moved a long way from where the rest of the band lived, so it was impractical for him to do this tour. And so we had to think of a new approach, being a five-piece rather than a six-piece. And one of the ideas we had was, well, why don't we make it a bit more sort of acoustic-y? So we're not trying to sound like we did when Crumb was there. We're moving on a bit to some other approach, you know. So that was an idea, and it seems to work.
There's also the fact that Chris Hughes, our producer, suggested doing an acoustic album because we'd done a couple of sort of impromptu performances for TV in the West Country when this album came out.
Yeah.
They sort of turned up with a camera and a reporter and said, "Can you play something?" So we just played in the corner of the studio acoustically, and Chris said, "That sounded great. We should do an acoustic album." So,
but this isn't an acoustic album.
no,
this one
was the tour. This tour
It's gone that way.
We're kind of breaking
yes.
in a bit of an acoustic style to see if it works or not.
So does that mean you're going to be playing more kind of art centres than rock venues as such, and festivals, of course?
Yeah, who knows? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And talking about festivals, which I just mentioned, I mean, of course, you played the first Glastonbury festival, as we all know, and I think you've played there 4 times now. And I mean, how did that feel coming back all those years later?
And it's an amazing experience because we were the first band on at the first Glastonbury Festival, would you believe? And then it was just like 150 people in a field, and no one had any idea what Glastonbury would become in the future. So it's amazing to come back after all this time when it's like a sort of city, you know, in the field as opposed to like 100 people. It's just an incredible experience. Yeah,
We get asked
great.
that a lot, you know.
I'm sure
to
it's
compare
history,
it, but
it's history,
it's
isn't it?
really quite impossible because the security of the first festival amounted to 1 policeman. And I believe there were a couple of guys on the perimeters round about, but they were stoned. So anybody who wanted to climb over the fence, said, "Go ahead, mate." So going back when it's
a different era, a different time. Actually, when you look at the Stones at Hyde Park, of course, it was the same thing. Everybody was so close to the stage. Different era.
Yeah.
But we also mentioned last night, the show at the Beatles last night, that you also played Bickershaw, of course. And the 40th anniversary of that is coming up, which is incredible the way time flies. Do you remember anything about that at all, apart from the fact that it rained?
Not much. I personally, not much. No, that really was my lasting memory of it. Just rain and mud and sort of like being in the First World War trenches. Sort of. You know,
I'm quite surprised how it's gone down in sort of
photo.
Yes, as this great thing. Although I don't think we stayed very long.
No.
Is it because it was the first massive festival in the UK? It was before Glastonbury got really big, wasn't it?
Yeah, but there were several. There was Wheelie at the time and Bardney and all these kind of things. And,
also, Bickershaw had the Grateful Dead and other people like that, so it was, maybe that gave it an extra...
Captain Beefheart. King's Family and these bands. The other thing we ought to mention, of course, is that both of you and the band in general, come from Bath, or Bath as I call it, which is still is a fertile music city. I mean, it always seems to have been, as was Bristol years ago. I mean, is that still the case?
Yeah, it's the West Country, don't they? They put mescaline in the water. Yes. So that's what it is.
And the ideas come tumbling out. No, but I mean, there's still gigs there and still other bands.
It's never been much of a place for gigs, really. I mean, Bristol's a huge city and it's got no...
It used to have in the 70s.
Concert hall, really. Bath's got no concert hall at all that's available. So we're not very well served that way around here. There's some good, very small clubs.
Right.
You know.
But Moles, is that still going?
Moles is still going, yeah. Moles is eternal, never stops. Yeah.
And you've gone all the way from Bath to Hollywood, boys. How did you achieve that? Do you want to tell everybody about that? You've got some songs on some top films.
It was always our grand plan, really, to be Hollywood stars.
Well, as songwriters, why not?
Yeah.
But I mean, you know, you were on that. What was the film? The
Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind.
Oh, that's
Did you see that, Pop Pickers? Kate
Absolutely.
Winslet, Jim Carrey, excellent film. Very good.
And you were the theme song on the album.
That's right. What Everybody's Got to Learn was covered by Beck for that film. Very interesting version, completely different to our version, but really interesting. And it fitted perfectly, I thought, in the film.
And so did that break any ground for you in America at all?
Unfortunately not. Isn't that a shame? No. Because times have moved on, really, and people just thought it was just like an interesting song in a movie. I suppose, you know, they didn't really associate it. Oh yeah, it's the Corgis. You know, we've got to sort of go out and buy their records.
I mean, have you let any other songs away like that?
Well, we found out that Craig Ferguson was using The Last Blindsole as his entrance music to his comedy show.
Right.
So that's
big show in the States, the Craig Ferguson show.
Yeah, it was a
Cult
late
comedy
night
show.
show doing that. Our reach tends to be tenuous, but sort of a bit odd and surprising sometimes. But we don't have the sort of thrusting profile as a band or songwriters. I think probably because we quite often do a U-turn and go about something else. You know?
Well, you've done that historically, that's for sure.
But also we are pensioners, of course. We don't quite have the teen appeal of Katy Perry or whatever. You know.
Well, you know, rock as a genre has kind of moved to pensionable age and many was but bands like Stackridge are playing the best music of their career, recording the best music of your career, hence the album, which I think is one of your best works. The other thing I need to ask about the recorded product is, of course, when you come back around 1999, you recorded with George Martin, which seemed a natural thing to do because you are the Beatles incarnate. I mean, how was that relationship? Did that inspire anything?
Oh, it's great. It's great, but very brief and very intense. It's all packed into a very small time frame. And at that time, George was so busy doing other projects that he'd spend a bit of time with us, and then he'd have to dash off for meetings and conferences. So it was a funny sort of thing. And when we were working with him, it was great. He was just as we hoped he would be, perfect sort of English gentleman and effortless in his production. It was great.
Was he kind of intuitive in his feel for your music? Because of that Beatles
he probably doesn't get enough. I mean, he's renowned as a producer and a sort of the fifth Beatle, and a man who sort of in the pre-Beatles with sort of the comedy recordings. He's good at spotting things, but maybe people don't appreciate enough his musical ability. You know, if you look at the arrangements he's written, they're sensational, really. You know, it's
they gave the Beatles that
if you compare his arrangement to some other arrangements, like other arrangers with bands at the same period, some of them are pretty embarrassing, way over the top, don't stand the test of time. You know, but George is, faultless.
Really tasteful.
Well, and you recorded that track, Something About the Beatles, which is self-evident in its title, but I mean, it really did work. It was a perfect coming together of your song with the arrangement, the production. Couldn't have been better. I mean, were you hoping for more from that when you did it? I mean, it was a strange time, 1999, wasn't it? At the time? But
I guess, I mean, you always hope that things are going to really take off, but one is also realistic, you know. It's.
You did become media darlings slightly. I mean, people like The Guardian really went after it. They loved it. You got good critical praise on it, which you wouldn't have got in the 70s, of course, with Stackridge. When I first saw you playing colleges, and you were kind of a comedy band. I don't mean that disparaging in a disparaging way, but people would remember Mutter and not so much the songs.
I guess so.
Whereas now it's the opposite way. Anyway, we're going to have to finish because this excellent support band, Blackheart, are busy doing their sound check. They're on all the Stackridge dates on this tour. Go and see them. It's been Pete Feenstra for GetReadyToRock.com, talking to Andy Davis. It's been a pleasure talking to you guys. James Warren on my right. Go and see, if you don't get them on this tour, go and see them sometime in the future. But as Andy says, it'll probably be next year now. But anyway, it's been Pete Feenstra. Thanks to Mike taking on the camera. Good afternoon.